I want to start today by pinpointing a specific feeling. It's not a crisis. It's not a disaster.
Not even a bad day, necessarily.
Right, not even a bad day. It's just this quiet, persistent sense that life is heavy.
Heavy is exactly the right word. It's like the gravity is turned up just a little too high on your specific existence.
Yes, that's it. That feeling that everything takes, I don't know, about 10% more effort than it looks like it takes for everyone else. And, when we feel this way, we immediately turn inward.
It's the natural first step.
We ask the who am I question. We grab our birth charts, we look at our sun sign, and we think, okay, if I can just understand my personality better, this heaviness will make sense. I'll figure out why I am this way, and then I can fix it.
We assume that if we solve the puzzle of our identity, we solve the struggle. Oh, I'm struggling because I'm a Pisces and I feel too much,
Or I'm a Leo and I need too much attention. Yeah. But here's the paradox, and this is really the hook for today's deep dive. We have a stack of sources here that argue something pretty radical. They suggest that for many people, the problem isn't that they don't know themselves. You can know you're a Leo, you can know your Enneagram type, your whole childhood history perfectly, and you can still feel that heaviness.
And that's the real frustration point, isn't it?
Yeah.
You have the insight, but you don't have the relief.
You've done the reading, but you're still tired.
So if it's not our personality,
Yeah.
what is it?
Exactly. So today we are unpacking a framework that suggests we have been looking at the completely wrong layer of human experience. We've been obsessing over identity when the real struggle, the reason life feels hard, is actually happening in the nervous system.
This is a massive shift in perspective. It really is. We are moving from the psychological, what you think and feel, to the biological. The core thesis here is that we often use astrology to describe who we are, like a label. But if we really want to understand why we are exhausted, we need to view the birth chart differently. Not as a list of personality traits.
But as a record of survival.
A record of survival.
Yeah,
That phrase is so sticky. It just changes the whole vibe of looking at a chart.
it really does. But before we get into the planets, I want to clarify this distinction you mentioned, identity versus regulation. Because I think most of us assume our sun sign, the I am a Capricorn part, is the whole story.
It's the loudest part of the story, for sure. The sun sign represents identity. It's your conscious expression, your hero's journey, the things you find meaningful. It's the plot of your movie.
And that's important. It gives life direction.
It does. But the source material argues that identity is not where the suffering begins.
Which implies that the struggle isn't a flaw in my character.
Precisely. And this is crucial for you, the listener, to really let sink in. Those hard feelings, we're talking emotional fatigue, that chronic tension in your shoulders, or the inability to truly rest.
Even when you're on vacation.
Right. Those don't come from your personality. They aren't because you are too sensitive or too intense. They come from your nervous system's history of regulation.
Okay, regulation. That's a term that gets thrown around a lot. Can we define it strictly in the context of these sources?
Yeah, let's. In this context, regulation is the automatic, unconscious management of safety. It's how your body learned to process the world before you had language, before you had memory.
And definitely before you had a concept of identity.
Absolutely. Life feels hard at the level of regulation, not at the level of who you think you are.
So if I'm understanding this, we're looking at the birth chart not as a personality quiz, but as a blueprint of how a tiny human learned to not fall apart.
Exactly. It's a map of adaptation. If we stop looking at the chart as this is what I'm like and start seeing it structurally, it shows us how that regulation was built. It shows where you had to be flexible, where you had to be permanently alert.
And where you had to shut things down just to get by.
And there was a phrase in the text that I underlined 3 times because it felt like permission to finally exhale.
Yeah.
It said, nothing in the chart implies failure.
No failure, only necessity.
That's powerful because we usually look at our so-called bad traits, our anxiety, our defensiveness, and we judge them.
We think we're failing at being zen or something.
Right. We think there are glitches.
Yeah.
But this framework says, look at that anxiety. Look at that defensive snap you have. Those weren't mistakes. They were necessary adaptations to the environment you were in.
Your system did exactly what it needed to do to survive.
Yes. So let's get specific. If the sun sign is identity, and that's not where the hard stuff lives, where do we look? The text points a giant neon finger at the moon.
The moon, okay.
The moon is the absolute key here. In pop astrology, you'll hear the moon is your feelings. And that's true, but it's incomplete. In this structural view, the moon represents emotional regulation.
So it's the mechanic under the hood of the feelings.
It's not just what you feel. It's how you process what you feel. The moon shows us where safety was or wasn't consistently taught or mirrored to us as children. I want to be really clear here.
Yeah, this part's important.
Because this is where people often tune out if they had a quote-unquote happy childhood. We aren't necessarily talking about capital T trauma or abuse. We are talking about mismatch.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because so many people invalidate their own struggles. They say, well, my parents were nice, I had a roof over my head, I shouldn't feel this heavy.
But you can have a good childhood and still have a dysregulated system. It happens all the time. This is the mismatch theory.
Okay, break that down.
Imagine a child born with a moon placement that needs slowness, silence, time to process, maybe a Taurus or Pisces moon. Now, drop that child into a family that is fast-paced, loud, and values high energy.
So the family isn't bad, they're just fat.
Exactly. They might be incredibly loving. They might be fun. But they're not regulating for that specific child. They are vibrating at a different frequency. So the child is constantly overstimulated, even if everyone's smiling.
So the child is loved, but they aren't stabilized?
That's it. Or take the opposite. A child who needs physical reassurance and closeness, a fire or water moonborn into a family that values stoicism and independence.
Figure it out on your own.
Right. The child isn't being heard, but they aren't getting the specific signals they need to feel safe. So the nervous system detects a gap. It registers a deficiency.
Now, deficiency is a loaded word. It sounds like something is wrong with you.
It does. We hear deficiency and think defect. But in this text, a deficiency is not a wound. It's simply an absence of experience, an absence of safety signals.
Okay.
So because the signal, comfort, slowness, whatever, wasn't coming from the outside, your nervous system had to step in and fill that gap.
It had to work overtime.
It had to generate its own safety, and that takes effort. Huge amounts of invisible metabolic effort. The source says the nervous system fills the gap with effort, and that effort just becomes normal.
You don't even notice you're doing it anymore. It just becomes how I am.
Until you hit 30 or 40, and you realize you are deeply, deeply exhausted.
That creates such a clear picture. It's like you've been treading water your whole life while everyone else seems to be standing on the pool floor, and you don't understand why you're the only one out of breath.
That is the perfect analogy for chronic regulation effort. You're doing double the work just to reach baseline. And this brings us to a critical distinction the source makes between survival and safety.
I really want to drill down on this, because in casual conversation, we use those words interchangeably. But this framework argues they are opposites.
They are physiologically different states. Survival is functional. Survival gets you to work on time, pays the bills, gets the kids fed. Most of us are experts at survival.
We function perfectly.
But safety. Safety is the ability to rest.
Safety allows you to rest. Wow, that hits hard.
It's profound, isn't it? If your system is stuck in survival mode, filling those gaps we talked about, you can never truly power down. You are functioning, but you aren't settling.
Which is why you can have the perfect job, the loving partner, the nice house. But inside, there's that vibration of anxiety that never stops.
You were taught to function, not to feel safe.
So we have this internal engine running on overdrive. The text brings in the ascendant, the rising sign, as a key part of this. People usually call it a mask, but you're suggesting it's more structural.
Calling it a mask is a bit diminutive. It implies you're being fake or hiding the real you. In this view, the ascendant is a stabilization strategy.
It's the shield.
It's the shield and the filter. It's the strategy you develop to enter the world without overwhelming your system. For some, the strategy is be competent. Maybe a Capricorn or Virgo rising.
If I have the answer, I am safe.
Exactly. For others, it's be agreeable. Libra rising. If I make no waves, I am safe. Or be invisible. Be impressive. These aren't just personality quirks. They are structural necessities that solved a problem for you when you were small.
But every strategy has a cost, right? Holding up a shield takes muscle.
Everything in biology has an energy cost. Maintaining that stabilization strategy requires constant fuel. This explains that feeling of inauthenticity people get. You know, when someone says, I don't know who I am without this role.
I don't know who I am if I'm not the helpful one.
Right.
Because that role feels like it is you.
But really, it's just the armor you've been wearing for 20 years. And that armor is heavy. That's why we feel that heaviness we talked about at the start. It's the physical weight of the strategy.
This framework really recontextualizes the other planets too, especially Mercury. I think a lot of our listeners, myself included, identify as overthinkers.
The curse of the modern mind.
And we beat ourselves up for it. Why can't I just quiet my mind? Why am I playing out scenarios at 3 a.m.? But the source says, stop. This isn't a flaw. This is regulation.
Mercury shows how thinking became a tool for safety. If you are analyzing everything, it's not because you're neurotic, it's because your system is trying to prevent unpredictability.
So thinking is a form of protection. It's preemptive.
It's an attempt to control the future. If I can think through every possible outcome, nothing can blindside me. And when you realize that anxiety is just your nervous system trying to keep you safe from surprise, the shame drops away.
Thoughts aren't moral failures. They are signals.
Just blinking lights on the dashboard saying, I'm trying to protect you from the unknown.
That is a huge reframe. It makes the anxiety feel almost caring in a misguided way. And what about Venus?
Yeah.
Usually that's love and romance, but here it's attachment as stabilization.
Right. It takes the romance out of it for a second and looks at the mechanics. Venus shows how we use connection to regulate our emotions. Things like people-pleasing or withdrawing when things get intense.
Those aren't just what we want.
They are what calms us down. If you're a people-pleaser, it's not just that you want to be liked. It's that if everyone around you is happy, your nervous system can finally relax.
The environment feels stable, so you feel stable.
And this leads us to the descendant, the opposite of the ascendant. The source calls this the place where hardness intensifies.
Yeah, this part hit home. The descendant is where our strategies stop working.
It represents the other. And the reason relationships are so hard is because true intimacy bypasses your defenses. It gets behind the ascendant shield.
You can't use your be competent strategy when you're truly intimate with someone. They see the mess.
They see the need. And that is terrifying to a system built on protection. It's where we lose control. And where we lose control, the old regulation patterns get activated. That's why love is hard.
The text also briefly touches on aspects, the angles between planets, calling them chronic effort zones. I love that term.
Not bad placements, but chronic effort. It implies a history of work. A Moon-Saturn aspect might mean you learned emotional containment was necessary. That's not a defect, it's a history of survival.
History deserves understanding, not correction.
Yes.
That brings us to the big question, the so what? We've mapped this all out. We understand our overthinking is safety, our fatigue is from the shield. But why doesn't knowing this make me feel better instantly?
That is the trap of the modern mind. We think insight equals healing. We think if we can just explain the problem, it will vanish. But the source is very clear. Insight does not calm the nervous system.
Safety does.
Safety does.
So how do we create safety if we can't think our way into it?
Through what the text calls non-interference. And this is so counterintuitive. Usually when we find a pattern we don't like, say anxiety, we try to fix it. We attack it.
We try to calm down. We say, stop worrying.
Which is interference. That is telling the system, you are wrong for doing this. And that just makes the system feel less safe because now it's under attack from the inside.
You're adding conflict to an already stressed system.
Exactly. Safety comes from allowing the response to exist.
Yeah.
If you feel anxious, you acknowledge it as a necessary signal. You don't try to shove it away. You just let it be there. That's what creates safety. The knowing that you won't be attacked, even by yourself.
It sounds like we need to completely redefine what growth actually means.
We do. We often frame growth as improvement, getting better, faster, stronger. But for a survival-based system, which is what we all are, growth is about regulation. It's about allowing.
Not correcting a mistake, but understanding the architecture.
And the source says the goal here isn't to make life easy. It's to make life coherent.
Coherence. I like that.
When things are coherent, friction is reduced. If I know I'm tired because I'm carrying a heavy shield, I stop blaming myself for being lazy. The tiredness makes sense. It fits the data. And that coherence allows the shame to evaporate.
And that's really the key, isn't it? The shame, the belief that we are doing life wrong.
That is the heaviest weight of all.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to summarize. We started with that heavy feeling. And we've learned that this heaviness isn't because you're a difficult person or have a bad chart. It's because you are living in a body that is working incredibly hard to keep you safe.
You aren't weak. You're exhausted from living against your structure. Or maybe exhausted from the sheer effort of maintaining it.
The source says that once we see this architecture, the moon as regulation, the ascendant as strategy, life doesn't necessarily become perfect, but it becomes inhabitable.
And inhabitable is such a beautiful goal. It means you can live in your own house. You can be in your own skin without constantly trying to renovate it.
I think that's a message we all need to hear. We spend so much time trying to fix ourselves, but maybe there's nothing to fix.
Maybe there's just a system to understand and to thank.
So here's our final thought for you. We usually look at our flaws, our anxiety, our defensiveness as enemies. But based on everything we've discussed, those things are actually the most successful parts of you. They are the strategies that worked. They kept you safe until now.
So what would happen if, just for today, instead of trying to fix them, you thank them? What if you looked at your anxiety and said, "Thank you for trying to protect me"?
It changes everything. It turns the war into a conversation.
Thank you for listening to this deep dive. Take care of your nervous system today.
And we'll see you next time.